I want to briefly show you how you can modify text even more with all the tools in the options bar. So remember, to modify text, you have to first highlight it with the text tool. So I'm going to come over here to the text tool, find the text I want to highlight, and let's go ahead and highlight it. You should see that the options bar up above changed a little bit. So these are all the options that we have to play with. The first one I'm going to do is I want to make this text a lot larger. So right smack in the middle of the options bar, you should see 12 point. So remember that points are the default unit of measurement for Adobe Illustrator. Kind of like a pixel, kind of not like a pixel, but it's a similar kind of thought behind it. If you click on it, you will notice that the larger you get, the larger your text will be. So choose something that works well. I'm going to choose 60 point just for demonstration purposes. Nice and easy to see. Go ahead and use the black arrow to click off, and you have deselected that text box. Now, in the previous video we learned about color. So this was the fill and this was the stroke, and remember that stroke is the outline. So I want to make that stroke a little bit easier for you to see. So again, I'm going to take the text tool, I'm going to highlight the text once again, and I'm going to change that color to purple. That way it's a little easier to see. And what I want to do is I actually want to make that stroke a little bit thicker. And I do that right next to the color with stroke 1 point. Just like the font size, you're going to see a whole bunch of numbers here. The larger the number, the thicker that stroke will be. So if I do 10, you'll see that, and I'm going to use the black arrow to click off, it kind of overwhelmed the text really fast. I can't even see that fill color anymore. So the higher you go, the more likely it is that you're going to overpower your font. So just make sure that you come up, and you can kind of play with it a little bit if you want to. But you can kind of see as you get higher and higher, that stroke gets thicker and thicker. So I'm going to keep it at 2. Click off, and now you can kind of see how that stroke got a little bit thicker, a little bit more bold. It has a different flavor to Mackenzie Interiors, doesn't it? With that being said too, just coming up here, 1 point is a default, but you can go smaller than 1 point. So 0.5 is half the size of 1 point. 0.25 is a quarter the size. So lots of options, fun to play with. I highly recommend that you do. The next box is not really great for text. It really doesn't show anything, but if you click on the scroll bar, you'll see that there are some pen tips. You know how you do calligraphy and there's different shapes to the pen tips? If you have a pen tip that looks like this and you're kind of coming up and down on the M and the A and the C, it's going to give different thicknesses to the font. Now, like I said, it doesn't really work on fonts. It works much better on shapes, so I will do that in a future video, but I'm just demonstrating. We'll try profile 5. It doesn't really show anything, and honestly it didn't even pick it. See that? If it picks it, it's going to show up here. So fonts can't use uniform. I will get to that here momentarily. The next one on the options bar is opacity. So if you click on this little arrow, you have this little blue scroll bar that will help you go back and forth. 100% means you cannot see through the font. 0% means you can't even see the font. 50% means that you can see objects behind it as well as the text. The colors come through a little lighter, but it makes it so that your text is see-through. So I'm going to go ahead and put that back on 100. So character, this is where you can choose your fonts. I do have a video to show you how to add different fonts if you don't like what comes with Illustrator. A couple of these, like Board Schoolboy, that's something that I picked up off of defont.com. But there's a lot of different options for you to choose. Regular, that is where you go if it's bold, italic, underlined. If a font can do that, it will be here. So Myriad Pro only has regular. Let me see if I can find one that has something else. Like let's look at Arial. Arial's a common one. Does that have anything else? Yes. See how it has narrow bold, italic, has some options. So different fonts are going to have different options. Some of them only have regular, but it's just kind of an FYI. Again, here we did the 60 point, so that will tell you like how wide your font will be or how large. Paragraph is an important one. If you click on that, you will see this little button that says hyphenate. If you're writing a lot of text in a text box, kind of like a paragraph or a column in a magazine, uncheck hyphenate, otherwise it'll hyphenate words that it doesn't need to hyphenate. And you'll have like 10 million hyphenations all the way throughout your text. So I always make sure I uncheck hyphenate, and then we're good to go. Next to paragraph are your left justification, center justification, and right justification. So depending on how big this exterior blue box is, so let's say that I get this, ooh, it's going to stretch with it. Wonder why that happened. Not really sure, but usually, like on this one, the text box, see how it kind of goes with it? If you wanted to center that inside the text box, you just hit the center and it will center the text. Or if you want it right justified, you can do it that way. Now, I have not played with any of these other things, but it looks like you can do bullets or numbered lists. What's area type? I have no idea. So for those of you watching, I really am an intermediate. I am not an absolute pro on Adobe products. I just help students get to where they're going, but if you guys want to play with things and explore, I always recommend that you play and explore. Lots of options over here for alignment, vertical align top. Oh, see how that one went right up to the top of the canvas? So that's kind of what that looks like. That's fancy. Ooh. That's just a really good overview of the options bar. I'm so sorry, I don't really work with or know the buttons on the end of this that well. I'm sure that there's videos online that can show you what those are, but at least that gets you started in terms of what options that you have. Let's talk a little bit about the options that you have in the actual text tool itself. Do you see that little arrow right next to that T? If you click and hold your mouse, it'll open up a secret panel. Ooh, secret. We have been using the typical type tool. However, there are more types of tools here. So the area type tool will allow type to fill into a customized shape. So I'm sure that you've seen logos where the font, it looks like a shape and it fills into that shape. I will show you how that works when we do the pen tool video, so let's skip that one for now. Type on a path tool is kind of fun. So to demonstrate that, I'm going to use the line tool, which is actually right next to the text tool in the bar. So here's a line tool. I'm just going to place my cursor randomly on the page. And I just clicked once and you saw that little box. So instead, click and drag out. So see how I'm dragging out a line? That means you're holding down on the mouse button. And I'm going to do a diagonal-ish line. Now, I currently don't have any fill or stroke associated to that line, and if you want to put a stroke, you sure can. You don't have to, however. But once you have a line there, we can come over to the text tool and see how as I hover my mouse over, it changes and it has that little pink word that says path. I always try to stick as close to the beginning of that line as possible. And if you click, it's going to place text along the path of that line. So here's Mackenzie. Now, obviously, if I try to add interiors, it's going to be really big. So I'm going to go ahead and make this small. Let's go to 36 point. And it'll just keep going until it runs out of room. I always recommend highlighting and changing the font size if you need to. Otherwise, what happens, let me just demonstrate this. See how I was continued typing, but now there's that little red box. So that little red box actually indicates that there's more text. It's off of the screen. It's really hard to get to once you get to this point. So I'm just going to do an undo. until that red box doesn't show up. If I want to add more on this line, you just have to highlight it and come up here and change the size of that text. And then you can add some more text to it. Going back to the text tool, let's check out what other ones that there are. Vertical type tool. So see how my cursor kind of looks like it rotated a little bit? Now when you type text, it's going to type vertically. A little bit tricky to work with, but not too terrible. Yep, and see how sometimes the font will stretch? You got to be careful of that too. So I'm not sure what the key to that is, why some, like this one, the text box will move the whole text and some of it stretches the text. Don't know. But at least you can see that you can type vertically. You don't have to just do horizontal typing. There's also the vertical area type tool, which is similar to the area. It's just going to fill in a more vertical space than a horizontal space. If you wanted to do vertical type on a path tool, it'll basically do this. It's just that the text is going to kind of come in this way. If you want to play with some of these, go ahead and do it. The last one is the touch type tool, which allows you to alter the size or rotation of any one character within your text. So if you want to emphasize one or two letters, click on the tool, and then it says click on a character. So let's play with this big giant K in this. See how it highlights just that K? Now I can make that K giant sized, whereas the rest of the text remains there. Very nice, very nice. This little button up here will allow you to rotate it. So if you wanted to rotate the K, you can. So again, that was under the text tool, the touch type tool. Now to delete any of these, it's very simple. Again, I just have the black arrow. I select the object that I want to delete, and then I hit delete on the keyboard. Other commands that might come in handy are the undo and redo button. I probably briefly mentioned that and didn't explain it, sorry. So undo is Control Z, or you come up to the menu bar up here and type edit, and then you should see undo. And what it'll do is it kind of keeps a list of things that you've been doing, so you can undo multiple things, but you can't go back in time and just undo one thing without undoing everything else that came after it. So kind of tricky. But what I also like is there's a redo button. So if you undid something, but then you wanted to redo it, you can kind of go back and forth, and that's Shift Control Z. Really, this is the basics of working with the text tool. So please check out the next video, which is going to go over shapes.